The words sliced through the Christmas dinner like a blade through silence. Dad, nobody wants you here. You're a burden, always ruining the holiday. We need a break from you. My daughter Elena's voice carried across the dining table, past the glazed ham I'd spent hours preparing, beyond the candles flickering on the centerpiece I'd arranged that morning. The fork in my hand felt suddenly heavy, but I didn't rage. I set down my fork with deliberate precision and met Elena's eyes. You'll regret those words, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like winter wind. They expected me to break. Instead, I was about to become unbreakable. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. The candles flickered as we settled around the table, and for a moment I felt Margaret's presence so strongly I almost turned to ask her to pass the rolls. Elena looked beautiful in her emerald dress, though I noticed the new tension lines around her eyes. Derek adjusted his tie, always adjusting something, that one, and reached for the wine before I'd even finished saying grace. This looks incredible, Dad, Elena said, but her smile felt rehearsed. You really outdid yourself. I carved the ham with steady hands, the way I'd learned from my own father decades ago. Margaret always said Christmas dinner should feel like a warm hug. I wanted to keep that tradition alive. I passed Derek the first slice, noting how he examined it like he was checking for flaws. Actually, Mr. Hartwell, Derek began, and I winced. 3 years married to my daughter, and he still couldn't call me by my first name. Elena and I have been talking about traditions. Maybe it's time to modernize things a bit. I paused, the carving knife halfway to the ham. Modernize how? Derek exchanged a look with Elena, one of those silent conversations married couples have. Well, for starters, we were thinking Christmas might be easier at our place next year. More space, newer kitchen, you know? The sweet potato casserole suddenly tasted like cardboard in my mouth. But this house has been hosting Christmas for 30 years. Margaret and I... Dad! Elena interrupted, her voice taking on that patient tone she used when explaining things to difficult clients. Derek's just saying we could switch things up. Keep it fresh. I set down my fork, studying Derek's face. His jaw was set in that stubborn way that reminded me of a bulldog I'd once known. Fresh, I repeated slowly. Is that what we're calling it? Look, no offense, Derek continued, cutting into his ham with unnecessary force, but some of these old traditions, they're kind of outdated, like the grace thing. We're not really religious anymore, and all this formal china stuff feels pretty stuffy. Heat crept up my neck. Margaret's grandmother's china. The plates she'd saved for 2 years of Christmas bonuses to buy, the ones Elena had admired since she was 5 years old. Stuffy. What Derek means, Elena started. I know what Derek means, I said quietly. He means everything Margaret and I built here is outdated, obsolete, in the way. Derek's fork clattered against his plate. That's not what I said. Isn't it? I leaned back in my chair, feeling something cold settle in my chest. You want my house, my traditions, my Christmas, all of it modernized, made more convenient. For who exactly? That's when Elena's composure finally cracked, and the words that would change everything came spilling out. Dad, nobody wants you here. You're a burden, always ruining the holiday. We need a break from you. The words hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. I felt my heart perform some impossible gymnastics, first stopping completely, then hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Elena's face was flushed, her chest rising and falling rapidly as if she just sprinted up a flight of stairs. The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly, creating tiny ripples across the burgundy surface. But it was Derek's face that told me everything I needed to know. No surprise there, no shock at his wife's cruelty. Just satisfaction, pure and simple, like a man watching a long-planned demolition finally begin. His lips curved upward in what might have been mistaken for a smile if you didn't look at his eyes. Cold, calculating, victorious. I set down my fork with the same deliberate care I'd once used to diffuse sensitive equipment during my engineering days. The tiny clink of silver against china seemed to echo in the sudden silence. My hands didn't shake, a detail that seemed to surprise them both. You'll regret those words, I said quietly, meeting Elena's eyes directly. My voice came out steady, controlled, almost conversational. The tone seemed to unsettle her more than any shouting would have. She blinked rapidly, and I caught the first flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. Derek leaned back in his chair, the expensive leather creaking under his weight. He picked up his wineglass and took a leisurely sip, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. When he finally spoke, his voice dripped with condescension. "Oh, really?" He set the glass down with a soft thud. "And what exactly are you going to do about it, old man?" The endearment, if you could call it that, hit me like a physical blow. Old man. Not Mr. Hartwell. Not even my first name. Just old man. I felt something shift inside my chest, like tectonic plates rearranging themselves before an earthquake. Elena placed a warning hand on Derek's arm. "Derek, don't." "No, it's fine," I interrupted, standing slowly from my chair. My knees protested, a reminder that Derek's words weren't entirely wrong, but I rose to my full height anyway. "I'm curious too. What do you think I'm going to do?" Derek's smirk widened. He clearly thought he was dealing with a broken widower, a pathetic old fool clinging to memories and outdated traditions, someone who could be bullied into submission with a few harsh words and social pressure. Face reality, maybe? He gestured around the dining room with theatrical dismissiveness. "Except that this whole performance of yours is getting old. The lonely widower playing house, pretending like everything's still the same as when Margaret was alive. It's sad, honestly." Margaret's name in his mouth felt like blasphemy. I gripped the back of my chair, feeling the wood grain beneath my fingers. Solid, real, grounding. Elena's face had gone pale, and she was looking between Derek and me like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. "Derek, stop," she whispered, but he was riding the wave of his own cruelty now. "We've been talking about this for months," he continued, emboldened by what he mistook for my silence. "You're becoming difficult. Calling Elena every day, showing up at our apartment unannounced, all these guilt trips about family dinners and traditions. It's suffocating." Every word was carefully chosen, precisely aimed. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. This was an assassination, planned and executed with surgical precision. They'd rehearsed this, probably discussed it over wine at their trendy downtown apartment, laughing about the old man who couldn't take a hint. I walked slowly around the table, my footsteps measured and deliberate on the hardwood floor. Margaret and I had finished together 15 years ago. Derek's confidence flickered as I approached, and he shifted slightly in his seat. "You know what I'm going to do?" I asked conversationally, stopping just behind his chair. "I'm going to give you exactly what you want." Elena looked confused. "Dad, what do you mean?" I moved to the front door and opened it wide. December air rushed in, carrying the scent of snow and pine from the wreath Margaret had made our last Christmas together. The cold felt invigorating against my heated skin. "You want a break from me? You've got it. Both of you. Get out of my house." Derek's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. "You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life." My voice remained level, but there was steel underneath now. "You think I'm a burden? You think my traditions are outdated? Fine. You're free, both of you. Permanently." Elena's face crumpled. "Daddy, you don't mean that. I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing Elena's face. "You meant every word. And Derek's right. I am getting old. Too old to waste what time I have left on people who see me as an inconvenience." Derek grabbed Elena's purse from the side table, his movements sharp with anger. "This is ridiculous. Elena, we're leaving." "But our coats," Elena started. "Now," Derek snapped, taking her arm. I watched them walk toward the door, Elena's heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. At the threshold, she turned back, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Dad, please, I'm sorry. I didn't." I closed the door. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a full minute, listening to the sound of Derek's car engine fading into the distance. Then I walked back to the dining room and sat down in my chair as if nothing had happened. The ham was still warm. The sweet potatoes still had that perfect golden crust Margaret had taught me to achieve, with just the right amount of marshmallows. I cut another piece of ham, chewed it slowly, tasted nothing. But I ate anyway, methodically working through what remained on my plate. Call it stubbornness, call it ritual. Call it the last act of a man who refused to let anyone steal his Christmas dinner. My phone buzzed against the table. Elena's name lit up the screen, her contact photo, a smiling shot from last year's Christmas, mocking me with its warmth. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail, then immediately start ringing again and again. By the fourth call, my jaw was clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. I powered the phone off and set it face down beside my plate. The house felt different now, hollow. Every creak of the settling wood, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed amplified. Margaret's absence had always been a weight on my chest, but now there was something else, a different kind of emptiness, sharper and more immediate. I cleared the table with methodical precision, 3 place settings reduced to 1. Elena's lipstick stain on her wine glass caught the candlelight as I carried it to the kitchen. Derek's plate, barely touched, went straight into the garbage disposal. The waste felt appropriate somehow. I washed each dish by hand, dried them, put them back in their proper places in Margaret's china cabinet. The routine was soothing, familiar. My hands knew this work, had done it countless times over 30 years of marriage. The warm, soapy water, the careful handling of delicate porcelain, the satisfying order of everything in its place. When I finally turned my phone back on the next morning, there were 17 missed calls and 9 voicemails, all from Elena. I deleted them without listening. Then I made the mistake of checking Facebook. Elena's post was time-stamped 11:47 p.m. The words hit me like ice water. Heartbroken tonight. Our own father threw us out of his house on Christmas Day after we tried to have a simple family dinner. I don't understand how someone can be so cruel to their own child. Thankfully, there are still good people in this world who open their hearts to us. The accompanying photo showed Elena and Derek at Romano's Family Bistro downtown, sitting across from Tom and Linda Hutchinson, the couple from Elena's yoga class who I'd met exactly once at her housewarming party. Elena's eyes were red-rimmed, but she was smiling bravely at the camera. Derek had his arm around her shoulders in a protective gesture that made my blood simmer. The Hutchinsons looked appropriately sympathetic, playing their roles as the rescuing angels perfectly. 43 likes already, 12 comments, each one more sanctimonious than the last. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Some people just get bitter when they age. Family should never treat family this way. You're better off without that toxicity. The holidays bring out the worst in some people. At least you have each other. Derek had added his own comment. Thanks to everyone for the support. Sometimes you have to accept that people change, and not always for the better. We're just grateful Elena has friends who are more like family than her actual family. I read the post 3 times, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest where rage had been the night before. They wanted to play this game? Paint me as the villain while they collected sympathy like donations at a charity drive? I'd spent 2 years grieving, being gentle with myself and others, accepting help and condolences with quiet grace. I'd forgotten something important about myself, something Margaret had always known and occasionally warned others about. I didn't just get mad. I got even, and I was very, very good at it. I stared at the blank Facebook post box for 20 minutes before I started typing. My fingers felt heavy on the keyboard, but the words came easier than I expected. Truth has a way of flowing when you finally decide to let it. Yesterday was supposed to be our first Christmas without Margaret. I spent the day cooking her favorite recipes, setting the table with the china she inherited from her grandmother, lighting the candles she loved. I was honoring 33 years of marriage and the woman who made our house a home. My daughter Elena and her husband arrived for dinner. Within an hour, they informed me that our traditions were outdated and stuffy, that my home wasn't suitable for hosting holidays anymore, that I should essentially step aside and let them modernize everything my wife and I built together. When I defended the memory of their mother and our life together, Elena told me I was a burden who ruins holidays, that nobody wants me around, and that they needed a break from me. I gave them exactly what they asked for. I am heartbroken, not because I defended my wife's memory, but because I raised a daughter who thinks so little of it, and of me. Margaret would be devastated to see what Elena has become. I don't expect sympathy. I just wanted people to know that there are always 2 sides to every story, especially when one side involves a grieving widower who apparently committed the crime of wanting to honor his late wife on Christmas Day. I attached a photo Margaret and me at our 30th wedding anniversary party, surrounded by friends, Alina beaming beside us in her maid of honor dress. Before Derek, before the coldness, before everything changed. I hit post and closed the laptop. By evening, the notifications were flooding in. 67 likes, 43 comments. The support was overwhelming, almost embarrassing in its intensity. Robert, I remember Margaret's Christmas dinners. She would be so proud of you for keeping the tradition alive. Some children forget who sacrificed everything to raise them. You deserve better. I lost my husband 2 years ago, and my son wants to put me in assisted living. I understand completely. Elena should be ashamed. Parents don't stop being parents just because their children get married. But it was Mrs. Chen from next door who delivered the killing blow. I watched Robert shovel my driveway all winter while Elena couldn't even call him on his birthday. Some people show love through actions, others just take it for granted. That comment got 37 likes of its own. I was reading through the responses when I heard Derek's BMW pull into my driveway with more force than necessary. Car doors slammed. Footsteps thundered up my front steps like an advancing army. The pounding on my door started immediately. Not knocking, pounding. Open this door right now. Derek's voice carried through the wood, tight with rage. I took my time getting up from my chair, smoothing my shirt, checking my appearance in the hallway mirror. Let them wait. Let them stew in whatever fury had driven them back here. When I finally opened the door, Elena's face was blotchy with tears and anger. Derek looked like he wanted to hit something, preferably me. How dare you? Elena spat before I could say a word. How dare you put our business on Facebook for everyone to see? I simply told my side of the story, I replied calmly. Isn't that what you did last night? Derek pushed past Elena, stepping into my entryway without invitation. You made us look like monsters. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Humiliating? I let the word hang in the air. Like being called a burden at Christmas dinner, like having my dead wife's traditions called outdated and stuffy. That's not what happened, Elena started. That's exactly what happened. I looked her straight in the eye. You told me nobody wants me here, that I'm a burden who ruins holidays. Derek said my traditions with your mother were outdated and stuffy. Those were your exact words. Elena's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I was upset. You were being difficult. Difficult? I repeated. By wanting to honor your mother's memory? Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You twisted everything we said, made it sound worse than it was. Elena's hands were shaking. Dad, please. People are saying horrible things about us. Derek's boss saw the post. My yoga friends, our neighbors, everyone thinks we're these awful people who abuse their father. Aren't you? The question came out quieter than I intended, but it hit them like a physical blow. We came here to fix this, Derek said through gritted teeth, to work things out like adults. I smiled then, and both of them stepped back involuntarily. No, I said softly. You came here because your little victim narrative backfired, because people saw through your manipulation, because, for the first time in years, someone called you out on your behavior. The next morning arrived gray and muted, like the world had wrapped itself in gauze. I was making coffee when I heard Alina's car in the driveway, alone this time, the sound lighter without Derek's aggressive presence. Through the kitchen window, I watched her sit in the driver's seat for nearly 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel like it might steady her resolve. When she finally knocked, it was soft, tentative, nothing like the pounding fury of the night before. Dad? Her voice was small through the door. Can we talk, please? I took my time answering, stirring cream into my coffee with deliberate slowness. When I opened the door, Elena looked exhausted. Her eyes were puffy, her usually perfect makeup absent, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail that reminded me painfully of the little girl who used to help Margaret make pancakes on Sunday mornings. I'm sorry, she said immediately, the words tumbling out like she'd been rehearsing them all night. About yesterday, about Christmas. I said things I didn't mean. I don't know what got into me. I think I'm still dealing with Mom's death, and Derek was stressed about work, and come in, I said quietly. She followed me to the kitchen where I poured her a cup of coffee without asking. Black, 2 sugars, the way she'd liked it since college. Some habits die hard even when everything else falls apart. I miss her so much, Dad, Elena continued, wrapping her hands around the mug like it was an anchor. And seeing you try to do everything the way she did, it just made it worse somehow, like you were trying to replace her or something. I studied my daughter's face, searching for the truth beneath the carefully constructed apology. There was genuine pain there, real grief, but something else lurked underneath. Calculation, perhaps, or desperation. Is that really what you think I was doing? I asked. No, maybe. I don't know. She looked into her coffee as if it might provide answers. Derek says. The front door opened without warning, and Derek's voice preceded him into the kitchen. Elena? What the hell are you doing here? I told you not to. He stopped short when he saw me, his face cycling through surprise, anger, and finally settling on irritation. Great, just great. Derek, I'm trying to make peace here, Elena said, but her voice had already lost its apologetic edge, replaced by the familiar tension that seemed to follow her husband everywhere. Peace? Derek laughed, the sound sharp and ugly in my quiet kitchen. With him? After the stunt he pulled online? Elena, he humiliated us. Our friends, my colleagues, everyone saw that post. You can't just apologize this away. I watched the dynamic play out with growing clarity. Elena shrinking slightly as Derek's voice rose. Derek positioning himself between us, claiming territory. The subtle way he dismissed her attempts at reconciliation as if she were a child who didn't understand the situation. Maybe, I said carefully. Elena is old enough to make her own decisions about our relationship. Derek's eyes narrowed. She doesn't need to make any decisions. What she needs is to stop letting you manipulate her emotions. You're using her grief against her, playing the victim card because you can't accept that things change. Things change, I agreed. But people don't have to. What's that supposed to mean? I set down my coffee and looked directly at Derek. It means I remember our conversation from November, about how Elena was concerned about my living situation, how you both thought it might be wise for me to consider alternative arrangements by spring. Elena's face went pale. Derek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You remember, I continued, my voice conversational, Kate, how you mentioned that townhouse development near the interstate, the one with the senior services, how you thought it would be perfect for someone in my position. Dad, that was just, Elena started, and I remember you asking if I'd consider co-signing for your mortgage refinancing, something about better interest rates, consolidating debt, freeing up some cash flow for Elena's business venture. The kitchen fell silent except for the steady tick of the wall clock Margaret had bought at an antique shop in Vermont. Derek's face had gone carefully blank. I don't see what that has to do with anything. It has everything to do with everything, I said quietly. Because it tells me this wasn't a spontaneous outburst over Christmas dinner. This was a plan. Get the old man out of the house, get him to co-sign for your financial problems, maybe even get him into assisted living where he won't be a burden anymore. Elena's hands were shaking now. We weren't. Weren't what, sweetheart? Weren't planning to have me declared incompetent so you could take power of attorney? Weren't hoping I'd have the good grace to die quickly so you could inherit this house without the inconvenience of actually caring for me. That's enough, Derek snapped. You're being paranoid and dramatic. We were trying to help. Were you? I stood up, and Derek actually took a step back. Because here's what's going to happen. I won't be co-signing anything. Not your mortgage, not your car loan, not a library card. And as for your spring timeline for my relocation, well, I think you're the ones who need to start making alternative arrangements. Elena's face crumpled. Dad, please. You're misunderstanding everything. Am I? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Margaret's eyes filled with tears that might have been real. Because it seems pretty clear to me. You want me gone, Elena. You've wanted me gone since your mother died. The only question is whether you had the courage to do it yourself or if you needed Derek to push you into it. Derek grabbed Elena's arm. We're leaving. This is ridiculous. But Elena didn't move. She stared at me with something that might have been recognition dawning in her eyes. The words hung in the kitchen air like smoke. He did push me, didn't he? And just like that, the first crack appeared in their united front. I watched Elena's face as the realization dawned. Slow at first, then accelerating like a stone gathering speed down a hillside. Her eyes moved from me to Derek, searching his expression for some denial, some reassurance that would let her retreat back into comfortable ignorance. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths finally demanding recognition. Derek's face had gone rigid, his jaw working silently as he calculated his next move. I could almost see the gears turning behind his eyes. Damage control, deflection, anything to maintain his position. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, a tell I'd noticed whenever he was cornered. "Elena, don't let him get in your head," Derek said finally, his voice taking on that smooth, persuasive tone I'd heard him use countless times before. The same voice he'd used to convince her to skip our family dinners, to avoid calling me on weekends, to gradually distance herself from everything that had once mattered to her. "He's manipulating you right now. This is exactly what he does. Twists everything around to make himself the victim. He's been doing it since your mother died." But Elena was shaking her head slowly, like someone waking from a long dream, her fingers pressed against her temples as if trying to sort through years of carefully planted doubts. "No, Derek. He's not twisting anything. You have been pushing me. For months. Maybe longer. That's ridiculous. Is it?" Elena's voice grew stronger, more certain, and I felt a surge of pride watching my daughter find her spine again. Every time I talked about calling Dad, you'd find some reason why it was a bad idea. He just called yesterday, Elena. Give him some space. Every time I wanted to invite him over, you'd remind me how difficult he could be. Remember how awkward dinner was last time? How he kept bringing up your mother?" Derek's composure began to crack at the edges. His hands gestured wildly as he spoke. "Because it wasn't healthy. Look at this house, Elena. Look at how he's living, surrounded by shrines to your mother, unable to move on. We were trying to help him get a life." "Shrines?" I felt anger flare in my chest, hot and immediate. "My wife's photographs are shrines? The china we ate from for 30 years is a shrine?" "You know what I mean," Derek shot back, his mask slipping further. "You're stuck in the past. Elena needs to move forward, build her own family, not be constantly pulled back into your grief." Elena's face was flushed now, her voice rising with each word. "By isolating him, by making him feel unwanted, by convincing me that wanting to spend time with my own father was somehow wrong, Derek, you made me feel guilty for loving him." I watched Derek's facade crumble in real time. The careful, solicitous son-in-law I'd endured for 3 years was disappearing, replaced by someone I'd only seen glimpses of before. Cold, calculating, utterly without empathy. "Fine." Derek exploded, throwing his hands up. "Yes, I encouraged you to set boundaries because he was suffocating you. Every holiday, every weekend, always needing something, always making you feel guilty if you tried to have your own life. Do you remember what you were like when we first met? Independent, confident, ambitious. And then every time we tried to build something together, there he was, needing help with this, wanting company for that. Making me feel guilty?" Elena's voice was incredulous. "Or were you the one making me feel guilty for caring about him? Your father can take care of himself, Elena. He's using his grief to control you. Healthy people don't need this much contact with their parents." I felt a chill run through me as Elena quoted her husband's words. The systematic nature of it was breathtaking. Every conversation carefully designed to erode her confidence, to make her doubt her own instincts about family loyalty. "This is insane," Derek snarled, and there it was, the real Derek, the one I'd glimpsed in unguarded moments over the years. The contempt he usually kept carefully hidden was now blazing in his eyes. "You're both insane if you think I'm going to stand here and be blamed for trying to build a future with my wife, for trying to protect her from a bitter old man who can't accept that his little girl grew up." Elena flinched as if she'd been slapped. "Protect me? From my own father. Yes, from his neediness, his manipulation, his constant demands on your time and energy. Elena, before I came along, you spent every weekend here. Every holiday revolved around what he wanted, what would make him happy. When was the last time you made a decision based on what you wanted instead of what would keep him from feeling lonely?" I decided it was time to play my final card. "Speaking of building a future," I said quietly, my voice cutting through their argument like a knife through tissue paper, "I've been thinking about that car loan I co-signed for you last spring, Derek." The effect was immediate and devastating. Derek went absolutely still, like a deer caught in headlights. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. Elena's head snapped toward him, confusion replacing anger on her features. "What car loan?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek's face cycled through several emotions: panic, calculation, desperate hope, before settling on a strained attempt at casualness. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just some paperwork, a formality for the financing. $38,000. I continued conversationally, enjoying the way Derek's jaw tightened with each word. "For that BMW you're so proud of, Derek, the one Elena thinks you paid cash for from your Christmas bonus." Elena's mouth fell open, her hand gripping the kitchen counter for support. "You told me you paid cash. You said we were debt-free except for the mortgage. You said we were in such good financial shape that we could start looking at bigger places." "Elena, I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, stepping closer, noting how Derek instinctively backed away. "Can you explain why you needed my signature if you had the cash? Can you explain why the payments come directly from my account every month while you told your wife you owned that car, outright?" Derek's face was turning an alarming shade of red, his hands shaking slightly. "You're twisting this. It was just easier for the financing? Better interest rates with a cosigner. I was going to pay you back." "Were you?" I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "Because here are the payment records. 12 months of payments. And look at this. You've been late 3 times, each time triggering a penalty fee that I've been covering." Elena snatched my phone, scrolling through the payment history with growing horror. "Derek, this says Dad has been making all the payments. All of them. Temporarily, just until I could restructure some investments." "What investments?" Elena's voice was getting higher, more frantic. "Derek, what else haven't you told me? What other debts do we have? What other lies?" "Nothing. There's nothing else." But Derek's eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal, and we all knew he was lying. I moved to the kitchen drawer where I kept important papers, withdrawing a manila folder with deliberate slowness. Let him sweat. Let him imagine what other documentation I might have. "The payment schedule shows 18 months remaining," I said, opening the folder. "At current interest rates, with penalties and fees, that's about $7,000 you still owe me, Derek." "I don't owe you anything." Derek snapped, his composure finally shattering completely. His voice rose to almost a shout. "That was a favor, not a loan. You offered to help. You wanted to help because it made you feel important, needed. This is just you trying to control us." "Did I?" I opened the folder and pulled out the loan agreement, holding it up like evidence in a courtroom. "Because I have your signature right here on a promissory note. Very official, very legally binding." Elena snatched the paper from my hands, her eyes scanning the document with growing horror. "Derek, you signed a promissory note? This says you agreed to pay him back with interest if you defaulted on any car payments. It says the full amount becomes due immediately if you miss more than 2 payments. It's just a formality. A formality that's about to become very real," I said calmly, pulling out my phone again, "because I'm calling in the loan, all of it, due in full within 30 days. Derek's face went white as bone. "You can't do that." "Can't I?" I smiled, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant expression. I felt years of suppressed anger finally finding an outlet, channeled and focused like a laser beam. "Elena, did you know your husband's been making minimum payments on this loan for 6 months? Did you know he's actually been late 3 times? According to this contract, that triggers the acceleration clause." "Is that true?" Elena's voice was deadly quiet, the calm before the storm. Derek looked between us, trapped and cornered like a rat in a maze. "This is blackmail. You're trying to destroy my marriage." "I'm not trying to destroy anything," I replied, my voice steady as granite. "I'm simply collecting on a debt. $7,347, plus late fees, plus interest penalties. Will you be as eloquent about explaining this to a judge as you've been here in my kitchen?" The word judge hit Derek like a physical blow. His carefully constructed world was collapsing, and we could all see him calculating whether there was any way out. There wasn't. 3 weeks later, Derek paid every cent. Not willingly. It took a lawyer's letter, 2 phone calls from my attorney, and the very real threat of court proceedings that would have made his financial deception public record. But the money appeared in my account on a gray February morning. $7,412, including penalties, legal fees, and interest compounded daily since I'd called in the loan. I stared at the bank notification on my phone, feeling a satisfaction that was both complete and strangely hollow. Victory, it turned out, tasted like cold coffee and February rain. Elena called that same afternoon, her voice hollow with exhaustion and something that might have been defeat. Dad? Derek moved out yesterday. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. I could picture it clearly, the hurried packing, the bitter arguments, the ugly division of assets accumulated during a marriage built on lies. The silence on the phone stretched between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross, weighted down with all the words we'd said and couldn't take back. I want to come home, she whispered finally, her voice breaking on the last word. I want to come back to you. To us, to what we used to be before everything went wrong, before I ruined everything. I sat in my kitchen, Margaret's kitchen, surrounded by the quiet that had become my constant companion. The china cabinet gleamed in the pale afternoon light, every piece exactly where it belonged. The photographs on the mantel smiled their eternal smiles, frozen moments of happiness that felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Everything exactly as it should be, exactly as it had been before Christmas dinner changed the trajectory of our lives forever. No, Elena. The word came out quiet, final, carrying the weight of 3 weeks of careful consideration. Not angry. Anger had burned away in those long February nights, leaving something harder and cleaner in its wake, something that felt almost like peace. Dad, please, I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I know I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But Derek manipulated me for years, made me think things about you that weren't true, twisted my memories until I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Stop. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what I was about to say settle on my shoulders like Margaret's old winter coat. Derek didn't make you do anything, sweetheart. He influenced you. Yes, manipulated you, certainly. Poisoned your mind against me drop by drop until you couldn't see clearly anymore. But every cruel word that came out of your mouth on Christmas Day, those were your words, your choices, your voice telling me I was a burden. I heard her breath catch, a sound like glass breaking in the distance. But I was confused. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly. So was I said quietly, my voice steady despite the pain threading through every syllable. I lost my wife, Elena, your mother, the woman who was my partner for 33 years, who knew me better than I knew myself. But I never used that grief as an excuse to hurt the people I loved. When Derek suggested I was a burden, when he called our traditions outdated, when he systematically tried to erase your mother's memory from our family, you had a choice. You could have defended me, defended us, defended her memory. Instead, you chose to join him. You chose to let him turn you into someone I barely recognized. The silence stretched longer this time, filled with the weight of truths too heavy to carry. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible, broken by sobs that came from somewhere deep and irreparable. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I would give anything to take it all back. I know you are. And I did know it. Could feel the genuine anguish radiating through the phone, the kind of regret that changes people fundamentally. But sorry doesn't undo the damage, Elena. It doesn't change the fact that when I needed my daughter most, when I was drowning in grief and trying to honor your mother's memory, she wasn't there. Worse than that, she was actively working against me. I heard her crying then, deep, wrenching sobs that might have broken my heart a month ago. Now they just made me tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from loving someone who hurts you repeatedly. I've learned something these past few weeks, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I don't need to beg for love or acceptance from people who see me as inconvenient, that I can honor your mother's memory without needing anyone's permission or approval. That includes you. Dad, please. I wish you well, Elena. I truly do. I hope you learn from this. I hope you find someone who loves you without trying to change you, without isolating you from the people who matter. But I won't be your backup plan when your primary relationships fail. I won't be the safe harbor you return to when the storms you helped create finally sink your ship. The words hung in the air between us, final as cemetery gates closing. I hung up before she could respond. The house settled around me in comfortable silence, creaking and sighing like an old friend. Outside, spring was starting to show itself in the budding trees Margaret had planted years ago, in the first brave crocuses pushing through the last patches of snow. Inside, I was finally at peace with the choices I'd made and the prices I'd paid for them. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. But sometimes the person standing in the ashes discovers they're exactly where they need to be, stronger and more complete than they ever imagined possible. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.